Well, good morning, everyone. And good morning to everyone out in the ethers, out on the interwebs. Thank you for joining us here this morning. I'm Reverend Keven Kadel. I'm an assistant minister at Vita Spiritual Learning Center. And as you know, Sunshine's got a little bit of a weak voice right now, so she asked me to step in for her. And I'm delighted to be here with you today. Now, just a little reminder, this is more for me than you, but the reason that I'm here today is to feel better, right? So it sounds like you are too. That's great. And that means a lot of things to feel better, especially in the Science of Mind teaching. Because to feel better means that whatever your state is now, you might not be feeling so good, you might be feeling great, but you can always feel better, right? It also has another meaning in the Science of Mind because feelings are these positive inward sensations that are synonymous with God, right? Your direct connection, your direct revelation of God is within you by way of feeling. And in the Science of Mind, those are distinct from emotions, right? Because you can have an inward sensation and you can choose to express that inward sensation as an emotion. So to feel better means to get better at feeling, to be more in touch with, in the flow of, in the connection with that God that resides within you by way of feeling. So with that context, I'm going to talk a little bit about failing forward. That's the topic of the day. And so I'll share a little bit more about me. It's a lot of talk about me, and sorry, I'm feeling just, that way today. But a few years ago, I had this, I will call it an epiphany. Some might not feel the same way about what this epiphany, what was contained in this epiphany, what came forward. But I'll refer you to a maxim from A Course in Miracles that goes something like this. You become what you defend against. You become what you defend against. And for me, that is playing right into my kind of pesky, pernicious perfectionism, right? So I became defended against failing and failure. So much so that it was just pushed away. It wasn't part of my consciousness. If I got a little close to failure, whoa, I got to get back from that because that's not me. So I became so defended against failure that I was kind of unaware of it. It was kind of in my shadow, so to speak. And the epiphany was, hey, I have failed. I have failed at things. And at first it felt like, oh, I'm identifying myself as a failure. Oh, I'm a loser. That's all there is to it. And it's a false identity. It's not true about me, and it's not true about you either. I have failed doesn't make me a failure. It means that I have failed. I've made a mistake. I've taken a wrong turn, right? I've collected something that's untrue about me spiritually. And so the epiphany was, hey, I failed, and I fail sometimes. And then I started looking around, and I was like, you know what? It looks like other people fail sometimes too. So I'm kind of in the same boat. But it was the corner that I got to turn from being so defended against failure, so defended that I was failing a lot and not even knowing it, so defended against failure that anything that felt a little bit like failure, as all the quick fix self-help books would say, oh, well, you got to turn that around. You got to turn that failure into a success. And before I even get anything out of the failure, I was turning it around, which means I was sort of bypassing. I was sort of skipping over what the failure was for me and what I had to glean from it. But it was, it was not what I would call this really beautiful, positive epiphany. It was kind of painful at first, right? But as I took it into my spiritual practice, I began to see what the wisdom and the value of that epiphany was and is to this day. And Ernest Holmes says that, and it was my spiritual practices and my support system that pulled me through that process, because as you might imagine, being of a certain age and discovering, oops, there's failure in my life, and maybe a lot of it, and maybe a lot more than it should have been because I was defended against it, right? But Ernest Holmes says, you have within you a power that is greater than anything you shall ever contact in the outer, a power that can overcome every obstacle in your life. And that was true for me, it still is true for me, and it's true for you too. You know, so failure and success, the opposites, the binary, are quite different from accomplishment and achievement. I think everybody gets that. It took me a while to get that. You know, just because I accomplished something didn't necessarily mean it was a success or a failure. You know, failure or success is a mentality, it's a mindset, and it's based around a feeling that you choose or you ascribe to an accomplishment or an achievement or a goal, right? Now, I can say I've accomplished a lot in my life. And most of those accomplishments don't feel like success, right? They didn't fulfill or correspond to something that was, you know, deeply spiritual or fulfilling in some way. They didn't expand a dimension of my consciousness. They didn't necessarily feel important. And sometimes I didn't even feel like it was a step forward. And I know I'm just talking to myself about this, right? But conversely, those accomplishments that didn't feel like success doesn't necessarily make them a failure either. They just were. They were just things that I had accomplished, right? And Ernest Holmes then says, failure is not to be thought of as something outside yourself, right? A sense of failure is only the psychological and emotional reaction you have to experiences, in this case, which might be negative. So as you're driving along in this human phase of your soul's journey, in the rearview mirror is what you would call success, or what you might call failure, after the fact, right? You've accomplished something, you've done something, and after that is achieved, after that's done, you look back on it and say, well, was that a success or was that a failure? So it's something you're putting on it. And as you're looking through the windshield down the road, you might do just the opposite. You might say, when I achieve this goal, it will be and you put that expectation on that accomplishment, on that achievement. And it's metaphysically kind of backwards, this whole notion of success and failure, at least from a consciousness expansion, a consciousness growing experience, because it's putting the effect before the cause. It's putting the manifestation before the idea that brings it into being, right? And in so doing, it falls into this trap we call outlining, right? It's where we say, well, my good has to look like this particular house on this particular street. And if it's not that, then I failed, right? So you set yourself up. And of course, we always add the qualifier, my house looks like this house on this street, or something better, a greater possibility. So it's a way of starting with the outline, because that might be where you are, or I am in consciousness about something. And then it means, hey, there might be something better. There's some good here, and there might be something better. So, you know, the qualities that you ascribe, those inward sensations, remember we're here to feel better, right? And that feeling part is the God within you. Success and failure actually point to some inward sensations, some qualities. So as you succeed, you might say that my success has the qualities, the inward sensation of, say, prosperity, or fulfillment, or contentment, or completeness, or order, or balance, or joy. Any of those things might be the feelings, the God qualities, that God within you that is summoned, that is amplified as you succeed, as you accomplish this thing to which you've attached succeeding. Now, failure and success are actually quite different from failing and succeeding, right? Now, you have this fantastic quality, this faculty, to be able to witness your own life, to be able to constantly mirror something about what you're doing. So you're doing something at the same time, you're looking at yourself, and yeah, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, this is happening, that's happening. And what failing and succeeding can become, failing and succeeding, is this moment-to-moment experience that you choose to have. It's like a bunch of little branches on the path, and you're constantly coming up to this branch. Now, the way that failing and succeeding comes into play is that you have to be present. You have to be willing to just have that clarity, that vision in that moment, to know, to feel which side of that branch you're going to go down. And both sides of that feeling have value and importance. Meaning you get to that fork in the road and it feels bad about something about that choice, or it feels good about something about that choice, right? And so moment to moment to moment, you are responding to what intuitively or inwardly is feeling not quite right, or you're responding to what really feels right. And so there's a failing and succeeding that is the process of being, and it's the process of being present in that moment. You know, Albert Einstein said, failure is success in progress. Failure is success in progress. So that's what he's referring to. That's like, it feels like going in this direction, feels like not going in that direction, right? Both things are active if you're open to it, if you want to be that present with your life in any given moment. Now, those things that you might see out the windshield or in the rearview mirror, those accomplishments in your life that you're going to attach either success or failure to, those have kind of minor metaphysical value compared to that present moment failing and succeeding, right? That present moment failing and succeeding is something, it is a way of integrating spiritual practice, that work that you do on your prayer cushion proverbially, right? It's a way of integrating that into your life. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's say that you're just completely immersed in some process. We'll say maybe washing the dishes. That isn't me. But washing the dishes has your complete attention. You are just completely focused on it. Well, that is translating that time in meditation to an activity of your life. You know, let's say that you have decided to do something and you want to just summon that intuitive faculty within you. Then you're moment by moment kind of feeling your way through, kind of guiding your way through that process. Well, that is a way of allowing a sort of subtle affirmation, a subtle treatment, a subtle prayer to be active in your life. Let's say that you're a person that does visioning. And I'll give you the shorthand of visioning. You've probably heard it before. You're going to ask yourself one question. What's the divine high idea? What's the big idea? And you're going to answer that question in your mind. And as you answer that question in your mind, you're going to notice how you feel about that divine idea. So you can say, what's the divine idea of Seal Beach gathering here today? And you just sit with that, and then you might feel, oh, it's beloved community. And so that is the vision, and the vision fulfilled is being in the beloved community right here and right now. So that is integrating your spiritual practices into your daily life. And the other ways that that comes up, you might notice as you're working, we're talking about work this month, how is my work of service to someone or something? Because you might be so dialed into the task at hand, it's hard to zoom out and see what the bigger picture might be. And that sacred service, by the way, might be sacred service to you or to your family or to your community at large, right? How does a practitioner, how does a spiritual counselor, which is a form of spiritual practice, right? Well, your practitioner is going to help you in two ways. Your practitioner is going to help you get real, get true to yourself. You know, in my case, my epiphany, my truth was I had defended against failure. So this was a perfect thing for me to call my practitioner and set a meeting and work with my practitioner around, hey, this really big thing came up and I might need some help with it. And the other thing that the practitioner is for you in your life is a compassionate presence, because some of this success and failure stuff brings up material, right? And if you do that, if your spiritual practices actually expand and integrate into your life, it takes on a bigger dimension, right? And to simplify it all, whatever you're doing in your spiritual practices, daily, weekly, monthly, anytime you take that moment to be mindful, anytime you take that moment just to be present, whatever that might be, and there's nothing to it, it is really just being conscious of taking a breath, taking a pause. I was certainly doing that this morning on my way here, quite a bit. So, and I'm blessed to have that anchor of spiritual practice in my life that guides, guards, and protects me through any kind of a challenge in my life. And the same thing is true for you, that you have that guidance system. You are guarded and protected in every aspect of your life, because within you is pure spirit, surrounding you is pure spirit, and it's just yours for the asking, the taking, the activating in your life. Now, a couple of more things about failing forward. A lot of folks, I noticed, are really good, feel really good, and good at setting a goal and achieving that goal. I'm not one of those people. Because for me, and bless you if you are, because it's fantastic, the folks who set goals and achieve goals generally accomplish a lot in life. Now, again, it's accomplishment. Whether or not that's a success or failure, that's a whole other aspect of it. It's another facet of it, right? But for me, setting and achieving a goal is kind of empty. And as I mentioned, washing the dishes, no matter how I phrase that, I get to wash the dishes. I'm blessed to wash the dishes. I don't really get all that spiritually engaged in washing the dishes. I would far prefer manifesting a dishwasher than washing the dishes myself. So in any case, and any time you set a goal in your life, it is worth it to take a moment, just as you do envisioning when you ask yourself that question, what's the big idea? What's the high idea? Ask yourself what success and failure appears to be. And as you sit with that, what is the feeling? What is the quality that you associate with setting the goal and achieving the goal? And in this way, you are going to harness, you're going to summon, a force for good that's greater than you are, that's greater than I am. It's a force for good that conspires and converges for your highest good. And you enter into a kind of conscious co-creation with living spirit. It is a way when you do that, when you include the bigger dimension of God in whatever you do and anything you choose, what you're doing is that you are living spirit, and living spirit is living you. Now, another lesson that I have learned through my transformation around failure is that, despite what all the books say, failure is exhausting and depleting. It really is. And it is kind of a bypass. I mentioned the quick fix self-help books. It's kind of a bypass to overlook that emotional, we'll say, toll that failure can take on your life. And it's something that I had pushed down because I was defended against it. And of course, once that comes up, hey, there's a lot to unpack. And you hear, you might have realized that you failed in some way, or at least that's how you framed it, and that's okay. And that's when all those aphorisms and those exhortations kick in. Like, oh, you got to bounce back. You got to learn that lesson and move on, right? You got to change course. You have to walk through this adversity because it grows your character or it strengthens your resolve. And all those things are true, but they're not going to be true when you're at that moment of, oh, this didn't measure up, right? So you have to really commit to gleaning all you can from what feels like failure, because failure is a kind of a wound that is ready to be healed, right? And that means that if that comes up for me, I have to commit to do that work in consciousness, right? So what does that entail? Well, the first part of healing around failure is to have compassion for yourself. That is the first thing. You have to be gentle and kind with yourself. You know, I have, in opening to being compassionate to yourself, you're open to receive compassion from others. You create a kind of a divine circuit there, right? And that circuit is reciprocal. As your compassion grows, you're able to be that compassionate presence for someone else as well. And you continue that divine circuit. But I have memories from childhood of my parents, you know, stumble and fall. I'd fail a lot, kids do. And the way that kids can grow is when there is someone around to be compassionate around those little bumps in the road, those little failures all along. So that's my bar for my compassion for myself. I want to be at least as compassionate to myself as my parents were compassionate to me. You know, Maya Angelou said, if I'd have known better, I'd have done better, right? So even if I now know better about something, you know, I failed at something, I'm trying to learn from that failure, I have to take the time to kind of regroup and rejuvenate. Otherwise, I can tell you from experience, if I don't take that time, the failure is such a depleting factor that I don't really have the resources to embark on anything else, right? I lack that energy, I lack that clarity. So without that rejuvenation, even if those successes, however well I have framed them, come up, I'm not going to have the wherewithal to do anything with it, right? So it is, in effect, a process of grieving then. A failure is a kind of a loss, at least it is for me, and any kind of a loss, you might want to grieve around that loss. And it could begin with, hey, I just wasted a lot of time and energy on something that didn't work out. So that's kind of a loss. But once I sit with it, I usually find some other stuff in there that is hooked in that I need to unhook from. I find some other stuff in there that is calling for healing. And at the same time as you might be grieving a loss, and that grief might be brought up by your recognition of something that came up short in your life, you have to take time to appreciate the successes, the blessings in your life. Those go hand in hand. They're not contradictory. They're part of that same energy flow, that emotional flow that you are in the midst of experiencing, and it is transforming you. So before you launch into your next endeavor, take the time to rejuvenate, to regroup, to recharge, just so that you can learn all that you can, both in mind and heart. And that could look like a lot of things, but some of the things that have come up for me means that whatever it is, failing and succeeding, failure or success, that I am shedding any of those psychic burdens that I may have picked up along the way, right? It means that I am correcting some stinking thinking, right? And it means that I am really in it whole being. As much as I can bring all of me, that's what is happening as I regroup and rejuvenate. So be less concerned then with those earth plane successes, the job, the house, the relationship. Why? Because those things are the effect of some other cause. And as we know, effects are changeable and changing. They are relative to the absolute. So be mindful of the success or failure, but be mindful of the success in each moment. And be open to the possibility, even a greater possibility than you have imagined, to feel good as you can, about what it is you're doing while you're doing it. So that's what the incorporation of failing forward is in this message. And as you do that moment-to-moment process, that moment-to-moment presence, you're going to notice more success, right? Those successes are going to aggregate and accumulate and appreciate, right? There is going to be a momentum that builds in your life in a certain direction, in a certain vector. And that all moves you out of an ordinariness. It moves you out of washing the dishes. And it moves you into a kind of a timelessness and a blissfulness. It brings you more alive. Howard Thurman said, ask yourself what makes you come alive and go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. So let's turn our attention inward right here and right now as we all collectively come alive. And I call to heart and mind that power and presence of living spirit, that joy, that peace, that love, that compassion that exceeds all understanding. I just know that God. I feel that God. It is everywhere and within. Every person, place, and thing is an extension and an emanation of God. And therefore, I am an extension and an emanation of God. And what is true for me is true for you, and it's true for all beings everywhere, that you and I are a meditation in the mind of God. That you and I are filled and surrounded with that love, that peace, that joy, that compassion that is living spirit. It is there in you as you in full and complete expression and experience. So I speak my word that our lives are more fully lived in this moment, and then this moment, and then this moment. I know as we make plans and set goals, that as we go about the work of this earthly life, that we now infuse it with the power and presence of living spirit. We intend every moment to be clear in mind and rich in feeling. We bless and release that which has taught us much, but no longer serves. We embrace renewal and rejuvenation, ready, willing, and able to feel better and live our best lives. So blessing the world as I am blessed, I say thanks for this answered prayer. Thanks for this communion in spirit. Thanks for this beloved Seal Beach community. And I release my word into the law of mind and action, knowing as it is spoken, it is so, that revelation of the feeling, the God qualities within you, that's happening for you, it's happening for me, it's happening right now. That love and light of living spirit is living you right now. And together we say, and now it is, and so it is. Amen. Thank you so much.